just thinking about what makes any workplace team successful. And this is from the Harvard Business School. And Gail's mentioned several resources that we like, and a lot of them are from business. There's wonderful resources in business and education. You don't have to just stick to specific things for education, because pretty much in all areas, people struggle to work in teams. It takes attention and focus. And so there's lots of great resources out there, including this one. But as Gail has said, really discussing your objectives and having clear objectives, knowing the metrics that allow team members to assess their own performance. And we're going to give you something that can help with that. Working on communication and other team skills, and just, deciding things that focus on how that team will work. To increase the likelihood of successful team outcomes, we want to stress, again, it has to be tied to overall school goals. So we're not suggesting that you go off and do something totally separate, but look at what things are your school focusing on? What kinds of goals does the AT feed into? How can we talk about getting together and working on school time if we're not working on something that the whole school's focused on? And so often assistive technology is viewed as something separate, when it really has to be an integral part of what we're doing and how we're helping our students to achieve. So looking at how we can work together, and always having a buddy makes all the difference in the world. And that has been true for us.
My buddy.
True. And making sure you have technical assistance and support can be so critical, particularly in some of the rural districts, or even in a big district where you're the only person at one of the schools who has to deal with the assistive technology. And knowing who you can call on and who can help you makes all the difference in the world. Finally, enlisting the aid of an immediate supervisor. Administration and supervision is so critical to successful teams. And sometimes your supervisor doesn't realize that, and you have to talk to them about it and what a difference it makes. So have a plan to measure progress. Yes. And Gail's pointing to our other book we want to share with you. We did not send this to you. This is something for sale from CAST, but it's something we're very proud of. It's called Leading the Way to Excellence in AT Services. And we talk a lot about working with your administrators and helping your administrators see their role. So if suggestions for things that you can say to your administrator, or that you can give to your administrator to read and help them understand how important it is. Just for example, I think the biggest problem in all the years we've worked in AT is always, how do we get someone else to implement something we've recommended?
Yeah.
And as a team member, we don't have that power. Only the supervisors have that power. And so that's a critical place where the support of your administrator makes all the difference in the world. Going back to our other manual that we gave you as a handout for free, the one about assistive technology teams and many ways to do it well. There's a cool section in there that I like. It's on page 59 to 60, where there's some, 53 to 54. And then there's a self-assessment on page 69 and 70. And we're just going to take a quick look at some of these things. These are called the C's. And I like them because I like clever things like something like this. But clear expectations. And Gail's talked quite a bit about this. It's just the critical piece. If we don't have the same goals, then we're not going to work very well as a team. So discussing those and discussing how our expectations are communicated, so we know we have the same goals and we're on the same track. But I think another thing is just developing that context of, how are we going to work? How are we going to make decisions? How often are we going to meet? What is our focus? How are we going to make sure our meetings are effective so that we really can move forward? And checking frequently with the other school personnel to ensure that they understand your goals, because it's great if you develop those goals. We're going to build capacity. Oh, there's some other people that need to know that.
I once worked with a school district, a very large school district, that built an incredible website. It had everything on it that a person could possibly want to know about assistive technology, other than, how to work directly with a kid. And
they'll be done in 10 minutes.
Worked for a solid year on that website.
4:30.
But never told anyone that it was up. And so they came to me and they said, people aren't coming to our website. And I said, well, have you told them what's there? And they went back and did that. And now it's a very functional, very useful website.
That's a great example. So building the team commitment, as you discuss your goals and your vision, you may find that some people who have been on this so-called team actually don't agree.
Right.
And so maybe they don't want to stay on your team, and you need to find someone else who does agree with that vision, because that's really, being cohesive is really critical.
One of the teams I worked with in the last year had some people who wanted to work on building capacity and other people who wanted to work directly with kids, and they didn't want other people doing that. They loved the work with kids.
Right.
They didn't split the team, but they split the workload between the people that wanted to work on building capacity, and they did most of the training, while the people who wanted to work directly with kids worked with the more complicated cases. And that was a very good solution.
That's a great solution. As long as they're checking back with each other,
Yeah.
they're understanding who's doing what and when and why and how it takes you towards your long term.
Absolutely. And
goal.
those folks shared an office, so they were able to have a lot of contact, and that worked out for them.
Yeah. And then again, the big one, the charter about administrative support. You have to have the permission, the support, the charter from your administrators in the school. They have to understand why you're doing what you are. I think Gail talked a lot earlier about misconceptions and how our vision can help overcome those. But again, some of those misconceptions come from folks who don't know much about assistive technology.
Right.
And sometimes that's our administrators. They just haven't had any training in that. Why would they? How would they? If we're not doing it, they're not going to know what it is you need to do. And I remember years ago working with Kathy White on that in her district, and how she could talk to her administrator about what tasks she actually had to complete and how much time they took. And Kathy, I remember that they increased your time to work on assistive technology. But that administrator wouldn't have known that. You want to say something?
It was all about the data. You were so right. I mean, I just had to write it all down. And yeah, it worked. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just critical. We can't assume that administrators know what kind of tasks we have to do and how long they take, or how complicated they are, or how they relate to overall school goals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have to explain that. We have to help them develop their vision and develop the vision of all the stakeholders, all those teachers. If we need everyone to help implement assistive technology, and they have to share the vision. So they're a critical piece. Also, another C is control. Do your team members feel that they have sufficient control to accomplish their needed tasks? Do they have time set aside? And that's that piece of resource that's so critical. Do supervisors support the carrying out of the recommendations in the classroom? Again, the biggest problem we've ever seen in AT is getting it implemented in settings where we're not the ones implementing it. We need someone else to do that. And so do you have the support of the administrator that allows you to have that control, to be able to recommend something, knowing it's going to get carried out? And that part of that teacher's evaluation will be, did he or she carry out those recommendations? So it really does, it takes a village to do it. Collaboration and communication. And does the team use specific group processes? This is a biggie with me. And those of you who know my work know that I think having processes for your team when you work together are critical pieces. A decision-making process particularly. And the WADI AT decision-making guide is certainly a good resource for that. But if you have a district that's using some other decision-making process, there are 5-step and 6-step and 7-step and 10-step. And, if they're do what they're doing. But if they don't have one in your district, then pull that out and look at that and use it when you meet, use it when you're making decisions, so that you have a way to make sure you move forward. A lot of times I see a team who thinks that maybe someone is difficult to work with. They talk too much in their team meetings or when they're trying to make decisions about kids. But you know what the problem is, they don't have a good process. The reason that person's talking too much is they feel like we're not moving forward and I have to do something and I have to make it happen. So look at your processes and use the tools that are available to help you make sure that you are running your meetings and especially your assessment meetings where you're making decisions about kids. Make sure that you're running them smoothly and efficiently and you're using good process. And one of those is making sure you have someone who's watching the time. And it doesn't have to be the one who's speaking. And I thought that was timely since
I'm just looking at, there's a clock over
Yeah,
here,
there's a
so
clock over there.
I'm watching the time.
and making sure that we have consequences, you know, they're good ones and there's negative ones, but our success is viewed and celebrated as a team accomplishment. Do we get that feeling and that sense of being part of something that's important and that it's moving in the direction we want? Just at the end here, wanting to say effective team building emphasizes analysis of procedures and activities. It really promotes looking at how you work together and putting time into that. Divide up your time so that you're not always just talking about a child or a task or what has to be done, but talking about how we do it, how we work together, how we can do better. And that helps us strive for improvement. We had a quick task that probably we don't have much time for, but if you look at the back of the Assistive Technology Teams Manual on page 69 and 70, there is a self-assessment for these C's, the things I've just kind of rushed through in the last few minutes. And one of them is this, it's collaboration. And I need to tell you, there's a typo in that book on the top of page 70 where it should say collaboration. I think it says clear expectations. So you can cross that out and fix it. But we use this kind of thing because it gives us a vehicle to discuss these critical points. And I would say to you that that's what I want you to do, is take time to focus on how are we working as a team, no matter what your vision is. How are we doing? Do we need to set our vision? Is our vision cohesive? Let's talk about it. Let's take time and then look at how we're doing things. And you can pick part of this. You can do all of it. It gives you that wonderful way to bring up something that sometimes can be difficult, but that we have to address if we're going to be successful. And Gail?
I have to say, I have to go back to this previous slide. Many years ago, Penny started talking to me about the need to talk about how we're doing as a team. And you have heard me say already today that I just wanted to get the work done. I didn't want to have those kind of conversations. I just wanted to talk about, you know, what assistive technology we were going to consider for an individual child. But over time, what I have understood is that if you want implementation to happen, you have to talk about how you're doing as a team.
That's true.
It's the only way that you make progress and bring all the people along. And when we get to implementation, we have to be bringing all the people along. We wanted to share two other resources with you in case you weren't familiar with them. I'm thinking that many of you are already familiar with the quality indicators for assistive technology. The web addresses is here on the slide, and you can just Google quiet and it'll come up. We really feel like it's a wonderful, more in-depth way to look at your assistive technology services. The other manual that we have used for years, that we wrote originally in 1998 and have revised multiple times since then, is the Education Tech Points Manual. And you are the first group to hear that during the last week, we have put the entire text of the Education Tech Points Manual up on the website that you see here, so that you can have that. We used to sell it, but we are distributing it for free at this point in time. And it's divided up by chapters. So in each chapter, there's a part that talks about the work of the AT team, and then the implications for school districts. If you're looking for more of our thoughts about how AT teams work together and in each of the levels of service, this might be a good place to take a look.
Yeah, and can I just add in there?
Absolutely.
There's also a chapter on teams.
Yeah.
And there's also a different self-assessment tool. I'm real big on self-assessment tools.
Really?
Yeah. And you can look specifically at your decision-making processes and how they're going, if that's an issue for you. So that's all there on Education Tech Points website.
So we want to remind you that any change comes in baby steps, but baby steps can move mountains if you're going in the right direction.